you know, the audience has to understand that the United States had the finest education system in the world until probably 1960. And so all of a sudden, and I went out of the country in when did I leave? Ooh, 1953. And so I left when we had this great system of education. And
because
so,
they were sticking with the basics.
Oh, yes.
They were teaching people how to read, how to write,
That's right.
how to do research.
Yes.
And then you come back, and all of a sudden, instead of focusing on the basics, they're taking kids down the street and saying, well, what do the people in this big house eat? What do the people in this small?
That's right.
And the point, but what was the point that they would tell the citizens, not class warfare?
Well, that's a very good point you're making. It is, they would say, well, this is a world of mankind. You know, the children have got to understand that there are all different groups of types of income, people who are poor, people in other countries, and later on they were even having the children eating rice for breakfast. And a lot of, you know, the audience saw this. They'd have the children role-playing starving children in Ethiopia or wherever. This is to change their values. The whole purpose of this kind of education, which really is socialization, it's I call it socialism education, really, redistribution of wealth, etc., is to change our children through the schools so that they will be very comfortable living in a socialist world management system. And very clear, the teacher's manual for this particular social studies textbook said, I mean, I don't know that they do that, they're that clear about it anymore. It said it was based on a humanistic curriculum, and they defined that. And they said basically it was children had to be educated to be tolerant of all religions, all lifestyles. They should understand other forms of government, basically.
But that's not a bad thing.
No, it sounds good, doesn't it?
It sounds very good.
Yes, but the point was that they were not emphasizing the United States Constitution. They were not emphasizing rights, absolute moral values at all, right and wrong, which had been emphasized in all curriculum ever since this country was founded. And even under the public school system, you know, we had the Ten Commandments hanging in the classroom. No more of that, because you've got to be tolerant of everybody's viewpoint, and everybody means the whole world. So the education from...
So it's taking our culture away from us.
Absolutely taking your culture away. So I became very concerned, and I wrote letters to the paper, and I even ran for school board. I finally got elected after 3 tries. And I did manage to get a lot of the very bad programs out, the values clarification, survival games. They were putting them in where the children decide who's going to be allowed to live and who's going to die, who's going to be in the lifeboat, who's going to be allowed in the bomb shelter. They'd be given a list, a priest, a pregnant woman.
Some people would say that's critical thinking, teaching them how to think.
Well, you're correct. And critical thinking, you see, was the label that was given to the values clarification after the tremendous controversy over values clarification. And it's the same thing. In fact, Lenin coined the word critical thinking.
Is that right?
Yes, and it's non-absolutist thinking that evolves, and it's the dialectic where you have the thesis and the antithesis. For instance, it's wrong to steal. That's the thesis. The antithesis is it's okay. And so you come to the synthesis is sometimes it's okay. And you can do this with anything: stealing, murder, abortion, whatever. And
so there's no right or wrong.
You end up with a synthesis where sometimes it's okay, and then you just keep moving, you know, towards the non-absolutist viewpoint, and you sort of end up where it's okay all the time. Abortion is a very good issue to take on that score. I mean, we've finally gotten to the point where it's just okay, huh? But there used to be a time when sometimes it's okay. So anyway, the textbook was very clear that the goal of this particular social studies program was to, at a very early age, start to change the children's attitudes and values. Really brainwashing. This is what it is. And I recognize that because I had lived in socialist countries, traveled in communist countries. And so this retired teacher came to me. Really nice woman. She was so important in my life, and in everybody's life for that matter. I mean, the book probably never would have happened if it hadn't been for this retired teacher. And she said, Charlotte, you're absolutely right. I want you to go for some in-service training down east in Searsport, Maine. And she said, I'm going to pay. And I said, well, oh, all right. She gave me a $100 bill. That's a lot back in 1973. Mm-hmm. And I went. And all these people seemed very normal, nice teachers, you know, look like your best friend, your neighbor. And the guy who was running it, the facilitator, had this great big textbook that we all got that free. It came part of the package. And it was called Innovations in Education, a Change Agent's Guide.
A Change
Agent's Guide.
Okay. And who was putting this on again?
This was it was a group in Maine. I can't remember the name of the education group it was, but they sponsored it. I don't know that it was even the Department of Education. But the textbook was published and paid for by the United States Department of Education. Mm-hmm. And it was put together by a professor, Ronald Havelock, at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And basically what we were taught was that we were being taught to be change agents, how to go into a community as a teacher, or even some parents are selected, you know, who are all gung-ho for this new stuff. Well, it's not new anymore. They were putting it in the early 70s. Much of it was funded under Lyndon Johnson's Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was passed in 1965, where they changed education from academics basically to behavior modification, which is necessary for the planned economy for school to work. So that's just an aside, and we'll go into that later.
That's how you change people.
Absolutely.
Right. And control them.
And control them. And so he taught us how to identify, say they want to put in a sex education program or a death education program or whatever, and they know that the community isn't ready for that. And so we were taught how to identify the resistors, the potential resistors.
The people that would disagree.
Oh, yeah, like me. I mean, it was extraordinary to be trained to identify myself, because I was a big resistor.
But you didn't let them know that.
Oh, no, they didn't know. They thought I was one of them. And so I just was, you know, my hair, my scalp tingled. I thought, what is going on? You know, this is what they do they do this in Nazi Germany. They do this in communist countries or fascist countries. They identify the resistors. And they keep records on them, and they isolate them, and sometimes they end up putting them you know where. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn was a resistor. He spent 8 years in the Gulag. And I thought, whoa. And the resistors were these great people, and I only know Maine for that matter, and they were terrific at the time. And they were taking a stand against these programs. And many of them were saying, even if they didn't know what they were, saying, look, wait a minute, we don't have enough time in the school day for reading, writing, arithmetic, history, etc. What are you doing bringing in all of these programs? Sex ed, drug ed, suicide ed, critical thinking ed, values clarification, all these things that, which interestingly enough, just while we're talking about this, I have to show you this monstrous book. All of these programs that had nothing to do with education. And I want your audience, is it upside down? Oh, pace setter, okay, yes. Pace setters in innovation. Now this is what do you think, about 3-inch thick?
Yes.
Yeah, This was published in 1968, and it's a result of the passage of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which I mentioned, brainwashing, behavior modification. These are all programs in here to brainwash our children.
Now, what are the teachers saying about this? Or are they being brainwashed too?
The poor teachers at the time, if they didn't like it, there was a way to get rid of them. What they did, though, rather than automatically, because if they had tenure, you can't get rid of them, they would put them through the training. All this in-service training the poor teachers had to go through. But this is an extraordinary book. I mean, you just take a look at these programs. They're all throughout here. Value change. They even had school buses they were playing tapes.
Subliminal tapes?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
No, they were just tapes that were to help to change the children's values. I never heard any of them, but the program is in here. And the mastery learning programs were in here, master teachers programs, all the programs going in now, global individualized education programs, etc. So Going back to...
So it's taking the power away from the parents.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the parents don't even know that's what's happening.
No, no, and they trust. They're so trusting. So anyway, I went through that, and then we were also taught how to identify the important people in the community, really good people who want to help and volunteer to be on task forces to implement these things, whether they're Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, Garden Club, and these poor people have been used. We were trained how to identify them, go to them, get them to take a position in the community because they were highly thought of, people would listen to them.
And what was the mission? What did they tell you was the mission of being a change agent?
Oh, to bring about change, that the world, if I heard that, my superintendent in Camden was a change agent himself, and I got along pretty well with him because he knew I knew.
Right.
In fact, he said to me after I went through the training, he said, "Why did you go to that training?" He said, "I give that training too. You could have taken it from me." And I said to him, "Tom, I didn't have to take it from you. All I have to do is sit opposite you at a school board meeting."
Yeah.
Because I know how you all operate, and it is so sad that the education establishment at the highest levels, I'm not talking about teachers, has decided that they have to manipulate the people in order to get the programs.
But why would a superintendent in Maine, a very small community, want to change his community? What is he getting at?
Oh, well, no, he's really not getting anything, but he's a professional change agent. And I might point out that Maine is very important for this. Maine has had the National Training Laboratories in Bethel, Maine ever since the 50s. And people come from all over the world to go through training. They could be doctors, lawyers, ministers, teachers. They go there for training to become a change agent.
Here in Maine?
Yes, and this is in Bethel, Maine, and we ski in Bethel, Maine, and you know, we ski in Sunday River, and I've been over there in the summer, but they're usually closed whenever I go, but it's an old estate that was converted, and the people involved in this were deeply involved in intelligence in the beginning with the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, prior to the Central Intelligence Agency, and they understand brainwashing. And
so who's in charge of all this? You're telling me, if I'm hearing this correctly.
Yes, the National Education Association, the United States Department of Education. You have to remember that the U.S. Department of Ed, this will come as a surprise to many people, does fund the National Education Association for various purposes. Not all the time, but it is funded by the National Education, by the department. You know, so this has been going on for a long, long time. And so anyway, I got in there, and when I saw that, I just, as an American, and I just really was sort of an apple pie, red, white, and blue, you know, Memorial Day parades. I was brought up that way by my family. My father was a lawyer. My mother volunteered for everything. And I just was appalled. I've never, ever gotten over it. I got on the White Horse in 1975, and I've never, that poor horse, I've never gotten off that white horse, and I will not until they stop this, until they stop what is actually brainwashing.